Okay, speaking of Hong Kong, there must be a reason you stayed in Hong Kong for so long. You've been here 7 years, right?
Yes, I love Hong Kong so much. It's an amazing city. It has everything, and everything is easily accessible. The public transport here is fantastic. The life here is just very, very good. When I first moved to Hong Kong, I was in Tuen Mun, close to the border. And Tuen Mun, easy to get to on the MTR, buses, lots of parks up that way, beaches. My place there was next to a mountain, so I absolutely loved it. Right next to a market as well, so easy to get, fresh food. Hong Kong has the best of both worlds. So you've got the city, the activities in the city, hustle and bustle, amazing underground arcades and fun and good food. And then you have the outlying islands, which are so easily accessible by the ferry, literally 20 minutes. And then you've got jungle and beaches, and you have everything in Hong Kong, and it's right there.
It's true. It's so convenient, right? You have the AC, the malls, and then you have the nature.
Yes, fantastic.
Yeah. Was that the reason you moved to Hong Kong? Like, what sparked you in the first place?
I originally moved to Shenzhen, just across the border, and I still love Shenzhen. Shenzhen's great. Easier to visit now with the new visas as well. So I do love Shenzhen. I love the big city. Shenzhen, when I lived there, didn't have the bigger MTR system it has now. So it's probably easier to move around there now. But Hong Kong is just so easily accessible. Everything, even the airport is close.
That's true.
So no, I much prefer Hong Kong in terms of ease of getting everywhere.
That's true. I've heard teachers say they moved here because they can travel to Southeast Asia, to Bali, Thailand, and everywhere on the vacations.
Literally one plane away. So easy.
So close. That's true. What's your favorite food in Hong Kong?
I love trying everything, to be honest. Not picky eater.
See, that's not a
I'm not a picky eater, and I will always try everything. I absolutely love the steamed buns here. The Wong Lai Bao, the Char Siu Bao. I will happily eat them like every day. My favorite drink of all time, which I know is not that good for you, the Dong Lai Cha, the milk tea. So good from everywhere. Absolutely love it.
I agree.
Makes your teeth go brown.
Yeah. Where did you learn your Cantonese?
Usually taxi drivers.
Really?
Usually the first thing you probably learn in Hong Kong is, good morning, nice to meet you, and then a few taxi directions, turn left, turn right, and then maybe taxi directions of where you work as well, just in case. And then, of course, ordering drinks and food.
That's very helpful.
Very important. Everyone's happy to teach you. Cantonese, I found, for me, the tone's a little bit difficult. So if you can talk to your local teachers or friends or even people you just meet out about names of places, things, food, and really listen to their tones, it will really help you along.
Do you find a difference being able to speak Cantonese and not, like in Hong Kong? Because Hong Kong's such an international city, everyone speaks English, but do you feel like there's a different connection when you speak Cantonese?
There is, especially when you might get into a taxi, for example. If you can do all of your directions in Cantonese, I feel like, for me, you don't want to be too much of a foreigner as a foreigner. It's really nice to understand the local culture, get some language into you. It really will help you out in the long term.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if this is true, but I remember when I was in mainland China, like learning the language helped me feel more at home, as if I was less disconnected from the place, like that I sort of belonged to the place instead of was a full expat or foreigner.
In Hong Kong especially as well, I feel like they're a lot nicer when you're trying. When you're trying to speak Cantonese, I feel like they're a lot nicer to you as well. And they will happily correct your incorrect use of tones, which they do for me all the time. But no, I feel like here especially, you put in the effort, you try. I mean, you are in a foreign country and you do want to do the best you can to, I suppose, if you want to live here especially, I mean, learn it, learn the basics, start from there. You can even do local lessons. There's a lot of little centres around that will take, I suppose, foreigners and teach them basic conversation as well, which is quite good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Or you can check out our YouTube channels over here. When you came, did you have any culture shock or any challenges with living in Hong Kong? Like anything for someone coming to move, like tips for them to like be aware of?
That's a very interesting question. For culture shock, for me, if you've done a bit of travel in Southeast Asia, there's not so much of a culture shock. If anything, Hong Kong is better for that because there is a lot of English here. Even on the signs, there's English. So I suppose that's less of a shock for, I suppose, if you firstly moved to Hong Kong. Lots of English here as well for those who struggle, like me. But I think, I mean, when you first come, you can talk to your employers, fellow teachers, see how, you know, what they've experienced. Usually finding some place to rent is probably one of the first obstacles you need to overcome, and figure out where you want to live. Where you first rent might not be where you want to stay. Some places are very loud in Hong Kong, so
it's true. That's true. Yeah, I wonder about that, because I guess my worry, even though, you know, because I lived overseas for so long, and every time I come back to Hong Kong, I have like reverse culture shock. And one thing I worry for our teachers when they come in is, you know, in the West there's so much space, and in here you rent an apartment, it's like tiny sometimes, like most of the time, unless you live in Lama, which we won't say.
I started off in a very small apartment, maybe 300 square feet in Tuen Mun. But then I ended up adopting
It's not top floor in Hong Kong,
out on the edge in the new territories. The rent is better because it's further away from Hong Kong Island. But then I adopted a dog, and then the small place became smaller. So it really does come down to your lifestyle and what you want, I suppose. I mean, I know a lot of people love being in the middle of everything, and, you know, you just go downstairs, there's millions of food options, supermarkets, anything you want. And some people prefer to be outer islands, more peace, less noise, more space. The rent changes a lot, as everyone will probably know when they start looking for rental apartments. Out in the new territories, less rent. Closer to Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, more rent. But if that's the lifestyle you want, you know, you have a look around and you can figure it out.
Right, that's true. That's true. So it's maybe noisy, but it's super convenient in the middle of the city, and then you can like have lower rent, but it's more out there, but you have more peace and nature.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess the crowds, the noise, anything else. Oh, we've had some UK teachers tell me they didn't adjust to Hong Kong's lifestyle, work style. They said people aren't asking me like how I'm doing, and, you know, like things like that. Was that anything?
Chatting with a lot of locals and getting to know everyone, usually they tell me that please and thank you is implied. So, I mean, general greetings, how are you, things like that, they're not really asked too much. And especially in the work culture here, you have your work culture, you have your, I suppose, private time as well. Usually, I mean, if you want to be super friendly, that's up to you, and it is good to be friendly. But usually they're a little bit taken aback if you go, how were you? How was your weekend? Usually there's a bit of a break there, but it is, once again, be friendly. Always be friendly. But yeah, it's not a huge issue here. Pleases and thank yous are implied, and they just assume you're okay, unless you're not.
Okay.
We also hit on Hong Kong being a different culture. Like, you're not in the UK, so obviously the culture, like, it's going to be different. It's just how being in a different culture.
Yeah, that's true. Because I guess we've had teachers say they don't hold doors open for us, you know, or things like that. Like, which some people do hold doors open, but not everyone does, I guess. Whereas maybe it's more prevalent in the West. Would you say that? And no. Stacey doesn't agree.
If we're going to go into culture shocks for me as an Australian, it's walking.
Okay.
This is going to sound very, very annoying, but I mean, everyone is, of course, on their mobile phones, and sometimes we'll be walking and then they'll just stop in the middle of the street in peak hour. They'll just stop. No awareness of anything that's happening. And that's probably one of my biggest culture shocks, to be honest, because I'm walking quickly and I will walk straight into somebody. But it is a different culture in Hong Kong. I mean, we go on about how Hong Kong has a lot of English and there's a lot of foreigners here, but it is a different culture. And whenever you move to another country, you need to understand that it is different. And once again, observing, seeing how everyone treats each other, seeing, I mean, for me, especially aunties and uncles on the street, they might be talking about the weather, but it sounds like they're yelling at each other. But But they might just be asking, the weather is so nice today. What do you think about the weather? But it sounds to me like they're yelling at each other.
Yeah.
So very different culture. But once again, new country, observe, see how everyone treats everyone, and you'll fit in pretty quickly.
Yeah, I really like that because I think it's important not to take personal offense about certain things because they're done differently in like one culture versus another. And like, it's like you're here in a new culture, embrace it, learn it. Like, it's an exciting adventure.
Yes.
But I agree with you. Like, I remember the first time I moved to mainland China too, it was the same thing. Like, people were talking very loudly and very friendly voices if you understood what they were saying,
Yes.
but it sounded like shouting at each other. And I get, maybe it's a tonal language thing, I'm not sure, but it's just, different way of relating.
I got in trouble in my first year in Hong Kong. I was on the MTR and it was very busy, very peak hour. And I suppose a grandma came on, and I stood up from my seat and I said, please take a seat, please take a seat. And she started yelling at me. And she was like, basically, she said to me in Cantonese, she could manage herself. It was rude for me to look out for her.
Yeah.
If she wanted to sit down, she would sit down. So very different culture, very different things. Once again, be nice. Always be yourself, but at the same time, observe what's happening around you.
That is very interesting. I thought your story was going to end like she was yelling. You thought she was yelling at you, but she was actually saying, thank you. And she was happy off.
I was told off.
Wow. I think it was an exception. I think. That hasn't happened again, right?
I haven't tried, but I don't sit down anymore on the NTR, so...
Okay, because I've done that before where I've gotten up and they're like super warm and friendly. Like, it's like, thank you, young woman.
That's nice.
Yeah.
But also, my parents have come to visit many times as well. And sometimes for parents coming from the UK, from America, it can be a bit of a culture shock for them too. So once again, if you do have family coming to visit, you can share your experiences with them as well.
What shocks them the most?
For my parents, probably the walking. Everyone just walking across you all the time, walking wide to then cut across. My dad.
Yeah. Like when I went to the States, my friend was reminding me, I think he said you're supposed to walk to your right. Like if
on the left, on the right, every
through
country
one
is a bit
direction.
different.
And I told him, I was like, no, in Hong Kong you walk wherever there's space, and he did not believe me. Yeah, but it's true. Here it's just like there's just people everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
So just try not to bump into someone and walk where there's space.
And watch your feet. Don't stay on your mobile phone.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's another cultural difference, right? Like we're here, everyone's on their phone.
Yes.
Whereas elsewhere, they're on their headphones, maybe like listening to things on the bus. Is that what happens?
I think once again, every country is a bit different, but for Hong Kong and mainland China especially, everyone is on their phone all the time.
All day.
I'm
busy.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I feel like, is there anything left you feel like could be helpful for you to share with our new teachers or about Hong Kong culture shock or lessons?
I think for me, networking is also very important. Meeting as many teachers as you can, as many, I suppose, English teachers, local teachers. A lot of local teachers will go from school to school to school, ask them about their experience. Where did you work? What was that school like? Start understanding different schools have different curriculums, different student abilities, different bands. Some schools are quite good with academia, others are more, I suppose, lower ability. So the more you talk to people and get their stories, the more you will understand about Hong Kong schooling.
I love you have such an attitude of learning and you just ask people things and then you get to learn and glean so much from them.
Mostly it's just the gossip that you want.
We also talk about the differences between the work that happens at the school for a net and for
a local teacher. Ooh, I like that. Yeah. So I wonder from your perspective as a net. So what happens to us as an agency is we get complaints from schools, not complaints, but like reports from schools, feedback from schools that say your teachers are not working during school hours. They're on their phones or they're doing their own things. And I think it's almost like a cultural difference where maybe some teachers think, I finished my work, then the rest of the time is my own. Whereas like from a local teacher's perspective, they have so many more classes and they're like, why are these other teachers just resting and not doing anything? Like what's your experience like within the workload of local teachers versus a net teacher?
Usually as a net teacher, when you first start in Hong Kong, you don't see the difference between the local teachers and the net teachers. You don't really observe what they're doing at school. You don't really observe what they're doing in their time. So you kind of just focus on yourself. As a new teacher, that's fine. You need to learn. But eventually, once you've been in Hong Kong for a while, you do notice that the local teachers, they have 10 times more work than you. They speak the local language. They do all the homework classes, all the extra. They, manage all the classes in between time. Usually they might be your co-teacher for a lesson, but then they might have 4 hours with that classroom after you. So the local teachers do so much more work, marking, curriculum development, even report cards take a few months to prepare. The local teachers do so much work that you don't do because you don't speak the local language. So there are you have different, I suppose, jobs to do. But at the same time, the local teachers who don't have enough hours in the day are working very, very hard. They turn around and they see that the net teacher is on the mobile phone, watching videos or something. I mean, how do you think they feel? So for me, as a teacher, when you're there, you can even see what the local teachers do. You can see what kind of work they do, the marking. A lot of schools will have you teach the class, but then your co-teacher does all the marking. Personally, not a fan of that. If you don't mark the work that you teach, then you don't know what the students are actually learning. So I know every school is a little bit different, but the co-teachers do so much more work because they do speak the local language. They really do.
So what advice would you give a net teacher going into that situation?
That's a very interesting one. It depends on the school and the jobs that they're given, but usually net teachers are given their own lesson plans to design and create. You can spend a lot of time online searching for things, printing things out, practicing, developing worksheets. If you're sitting there with nothing to do, then there's something you should be doing. Even teaching yourself to do something, even looking at the curriculum a couple of weeks in advance, knowing there's a test coming up, what's on that test. Maybe I can design an extra game or something for this lesson that has something to do with that test. So you shouldn't be sitting there doing nothing ever. It is a different type of teaching culture in Hong Kong. And you do work. You get paid to work. You need to work. And no matter what you do, the local teachers are working 5 times harder than you.
That's so true. Yeah. And you're paid to work during that time. So it's like lesson planning. And it's like if you have free lessons, it gives you a chance to Google and improve your lesson and become a better teacher, which you might not have if you keep teaching for a long time and become a local teacher in your own country, right? Because your load might go back up as a local teacher.
If I collect back homework at the end of the lesson and I see that they've written one-word answers or they've skipped bits of the homework or things like that, then I'll go, okay, so when I taught that bit, maybe they didn't quite understand what I was trying to teach. So then you can spend your time figuring out a different way of teaching the same thing. And I mean, I say that sounds a bit easy, but it's not. It's really quite difficult, especially when you have a classroom full of 30 students and there might be some academic learners, some listeners, some kinesthetic learners, different types of learners in your classroom. How are you going to reach all of them by the time that exam comes around? So very, very difficult to design your work. You shouldn't be sitting there doing nothing ever.
Yeah, I agree. One last question. So sometimes our teachers would feel like they're not cared for in their school. And I feel like that's related to, the local teachers being really busy. But I don't know if you have any more about the culture you want to say about that. Like when a net comes in, and I understand they feel lonely because they're the only native English teacher in a school maybe, and they feel left out because maybe the school announcements come through and they don't hear about it. Things like that. Like, have you experienced that and how did you adjust to that?
This is an interesting question too, because I suppose in Hong Kong, we have a very large turnover of English teachers. So schools might get 5 new English teachers every year. So it's like this revolving door of English teachers. So when the new teacher comes in, they're going, well, are you going to be here for a year? You're going to be here for 6 months, So it's up to you as yourself and as the teacher to get them to understand that you are there, you're there to do your job and you care about it. If you don't show any care, then there will be none coming back to you.
Yeah, I think so. It's like taking initiative and becoming part of the school.
Yes.
Instead of being passive and waiting.
And once again, talking to your co-teachers, because they talk to each other as well. And if there are a few nets in your school, a few native English teachers, they're going to compare. Oh, this teacher's well prepared for their lessons. We like working with this teacher. This teacher comes in and has nothing, expects me to do all the work. So different levels of care factor. If you show that you care about your lessons and your students in your classroom, then the care will come back.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Well, thank you so much, Georgia, for coming today. This was a feast. I think you gave our new teachers so much good advice that would really help them. And
No problem.
I'm so glad you came. Thank you so much for doing this.
Anytime.
If you like this kind of videos and you want to learn more about teaching in Hong Kong or teaching English, please press like and subscribe to us. We'll see you next time. Bye.